straight in with red.
So I'm going to get there, John. I really am.
You're better than me because red does not mean go.
I know, right? Michael got it right away. Good evening. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order of the Oshtemo Township regular board meeting for March 26, 2024. And at this time, I would welcome you all to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And item 3 is the opportunity to identify any board members utilizing remote location identification for remote attendance. I see we have a fully present board, so no one participating remotely. And next, we will move to item number 4. I invite a member of this body to read from the Township Mission, Vision, and Core Values.
Our township vision, a sustainable and innovative community built through a legacy of planned, responsible growth and rural preservation.
Thank you, Trustee Sikora. And at this time, I would welcome anyone in the public wishing to make comment on any items that are not a part of tonight's agenda. Seeing none, I will close public comment and move to public official updates. And at this time, it's my pleasure to invite Carrie Denbraber from Michigan Department of Transportation. And she's going to share with us, I think, a little bit about what's happening in our area for the building season.
But it will be this whole thing.
Oh,
Okay,
perfect.
perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. I knew I needed your help still.
Well, thank
Well,
you,
thank you,
Anna,
for inviting me tonight to share some updates that MDOT has in the Oshtemo Township area within the next few years, specifically 2024 to 2026. I have a map view of some of the projects coming up. There's 4 that I'm going to be talking about tonight. One being at the US 131 business route, one at the West Main and US 131, one at US 131 and KL, and another one at US 131 and I-94. So there is a lot of work happening right along the 131 corridor, which is right in the heart of the Oshtemo Township area.
So the
So
first project
that you're going to be seeing coming up very soon is the 131 at KL bridge replacements.
I
don't know if you've driven over them lately on 131, but they are in desperate need of
repair and replacement. So I wanted to show a street view at KL here compared to, and maybe this plan view profile drawing of the new bridge. It might be a little bit hard to see some of the details here. But what I wanted to point out here is we're going from, I think there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spans in the current layout of the bridges for 2 different bridges, and we're going to 2 spans. So there's only going to be 1 set of piers right next to the KL road in the future. That is allowing for us to, and you can't see it, it's really small in here, but we're adding a bike path with this project along KL. So that is going to be starting right here in April, and it's going to be going through December of 2025. Yep. So April 14th, I believe, is the official start date, and when that happens, KL will be closed and be closed for the full 2 years and detoured. The detour, I don't think it's that bad. I'm sure that people who travel it daily are going to be, have some complaints, but it's 11th to Michigan Avenue and then back over to Drake to make that detour around KL. But it will be closed the entire 2 years during work. So it won't reopen in the wintertime when we have some construction staging changes. The Metro, during the design process, Metro has been part of the discussions. They do know that this work is coming, that KL is detoured, and they have changed their routes accordingly. I don't know what those new routes are or if they've changed times, but I know that usually when we've worked with them, they've done a great job of updating their routes and times and letting their subscribers know. And I had already said that there's a bike path that's being installed with this project. What a neat way that we can connect communities underneath 131 there. On 131, just so that everybody is aware of how this construction is being staged across the 2 years, we're going to be constructing the crossovers on 131 so that we can move freeway traffic back and forth. We want to maintain 2 lanes on 131 at all times, and we're doing that by constructing a temporary bridge. In 2025, so that's what's happening in 2024. In 2025, we'll be constructing those 2 new bridges. Northbound is planned to go first, and when northbound construction is happening, the northbound ramp from Stadium will be closed for a while and be detoured. And then they'll be doing the same work on southbound and constructing that bridge. Some of the items that you'll see probably closer to the end of 2025 and may wrap into 2026 is any of the, we'll have traffic open for everybody, but it might be some grading, removing those temporary crossovers that we constructed, removing that temporary bridge, but it won't be necessarily impacting the traffic up there. So those are some of the updates on the KL Avenue Bridge that is going to be built very soon. The next project that we have coming up will have a ramp connection at the 131 business route at the 131 interchange. Basically, this is adding the 2 ramp movements that don't exist right now. I'm going to go to the next view, and that might help show what that looks like. So we're going to be connecting northbound 131 and creating a ramp to the eastbound/southbound movement onto the business route. And then the same thing, we're going to be constructing from the business route, we'll have a connecting ramp that connects to southbound 131. Those 2 movements do not exist right now, and that is the purpose of this project, is creating that connectivity to the north side into the downtown area of Kalamazoo. Because of that ramp movement from the BR back to southbound 131, that does require 2 new bridges to be built, one over the BR and then one over 131 northbound. Right now, the traffic impacts, I would say, are very minimal. You're not going to really notice too much. We're going to maintain 2 lanes on 131, except for the 1 to 2 weekends where we're going to have to detour 131 using our new ramp to construct and place those beams over 131. But we're planning on doing that night work and trying to, have minimal impacts to traffic at that time. We would plan to start this work in February of 2025, and it would all be completed. And that would be starting in February would be maybe some earth movement, tree removals, clearing, that kind of stuff. And then we plan on finishing up construction in 2025. Another project that's going to be coming up in 2025 is M43 West Main. This is an operations project in improving the operational along West Main from 10th Street all the way to Drake Road. I'm going to go in, there's a lot going on here. So I just wanted to show this high-level view of kind of what's happening, what intersections, where we have work planned. There are some ramp improvements as well that you can see in the blue on this. The next slide kind of goes through each of these improvements. We're widening West Main on the north side of the road all the way from Drake to 131. So basically, we'll have 3 lanes that are going westbound that basically connects all of those right turn lanes that we had going into drives and stuff like that. It connects all those drives, the right turn lanes, and creates a through right turn movement all the way from Drake to 131. There will also be some intersection improvements. We're going to add some dual left turn movements at Maple Hill. That would be for the movement going eastbound to northbound, but we're also putting the pavement there for any future development that maybe happens to the south, and then we need to have dual lefts that go to the south too. So we will stripe it so that it only has a single left turn at this point in time, but it will have the width in the pavement to have dual lefts in the future. We're also adding a dual left movement from out of Mall Drive to go westbound onto West Main. So with that, there will be signal improvements there and some restriping of that intersection as well. We are doing extensive driveway access management through here. We're trying to close some drives as we can, but also trying to do the access management of right-ins, right-outs where feasible, making sure that we can create a safe corridor, but also that makes it so that people can move through that corridor in the best and safe way possible. If you have any questions on those drives that are specifically being closed, let me know. We can go back to the other one. Go ahead.
Well, actually, dual left turns from West Main on to Maple Hill,
Yes, northbound.
northbound.
Correct.
Okay.
There is the pavement to do it at
No,
southbound as well.
So there will be 2 lanes going down Maple Hill?
Northbound?
Yeah.
So the question was if there's going to be 2 lanes going northbound onto Maple Hill. So right now it's striped, so that it does not. It used to. I think the county came through and restriped it so that they had through right and left turn movement. So there's enough pavement there to do 2 lanes north. We've been in talks with the county already. Because of the we don't know what the developments are 100% yet on the extent that's on the north side of Maple Hill and on the south side. As we get further counts of what the south side looks like, our proposal is on Maple Hill, there'd be two lanes going north that then merge into one as you get closer to the drive that goes into the,
Target and
yes,
movie theater.
yes.
Yeah.
So our proposal is to have a through left turn movement and a dedicated right turn movement coming south on Maple Hill still. That is the proposal until we get further information about what the development is on the south side of Maple Hill. That could totally change it because you may need a dedicated full through movement in the future.
So then with that Firestone driveway that's like immediately when you turn onto Maple Hill, that Firestone driveway that's right there, would that remain open with 2 lanes?
It is right now, yes. Yes. There is some widening right there within the right-of-way currently that's happening with this project in it. They still have their driveway right there.
Okay.
Did you need me to go back to that slide before? Do you want to see it? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And then within the limits of the project, we're going to do a mill and overlay so that we have a nice new fresh seal on the entire roadway besides the widening section. During construction, we're going to be maintaining traffic on West Main. I do have on here that we're maintaining 1 lane of traffic in each direction, and there's a caveat to that. We're trying to maintain as many lanes as we can, and it kind of flips back and forth. During some stages, we have 2 lanes in one direction and 1 lane in the other. Sometimes we have 2 lanes in each direction. But there is a couple of times when we have 1 lane in each direction with a right turn lane through the center. But it kind of flips back and forth just depending on where the widening is occurring, if we're doing intersection work, and even over at the interchange with that construction staging there. We do have some detours that'll have to happen periodically, like when we have the ramp work happening, we'll have to detour a couple of the ramps occasionally. And then the same thing, like if we have to close the intersection at Maple Hill, we'll have to tell traffic to go down to Drake and make the turns there instead. But that will be all, shared through communication when we have stage changes as that occurs. And we try to keep our My Drive up to date where we know where it's going to be closures or detours. And that work would be starting in March and go through December of next year. So it'd be all done in 2025. And the final project that we have is the I-94 westbound to 131 northbound ramp widening. The project limits are kind of, I would say, just to the east, or I'm sorry, just to the west of Oakland on 94 through the northbound ramp movement to 131, and then up to the Parkview Bridge at this point in time. The purpose of this project, again, just like the West Main project, is an operational enhancement. We've noticed a lot of congestion, especially during peak hour in the afternoon from Oakland, 94, from Oakland to 131. There's a lot of weave merge coming from Oakland, people wanting to go northbound on 131. So we're adding a second ramp lane onto the ramp to northbound. That then we would also include, so that means that we have to widen the ramp to get 2 lanes through there. Then we're going to be extending that ramp acceleration and merge lane onto US 131. And it almost goes all the way up to Parkview. We're in some discussions right now. This might change a little bit. We would really like to extend this all the way up to Stadium Drive, and we're trying to analyze that right now. So it'd be an auxiliary lane basically from 131 up to Stadium. It's in the works right now. If that does happen, I have on the bottom here, the schedule is 2025 or 2026. That is the TBD part, is if we can get that to extend all the way up to Stadium, we'd probably push it to 2025, or 2026, I'm sorry. And with all the other work going on in this area, it might be better to push this to 2026 anyway, with all of the different detours going on. The maintaining traffic, one of the other things is 1 lane of traffic would be maintained on 131 going northbound, so that as the ramp traffic comes on, when the ramp to northbound is open, that lane would just go into its own lane during construction. But south of 94, it will go down to 1 lane. So there could potentially be some backups from that. We have less traffic count south of 94, but just so that everybody is aware that it's going to be down to 1 lane south of 94. Go ahead.
I have a question on the, I'm sorry, was it? Okay. On the widening the westbound to the northbound
Yeah.
131, right, I travel that all the time.
Yep.
So I know exactly what you're saying. I mean, you have to hit the brakes sometimes because there's so many cars on that ramp. But are you going to be changing how, how when you come off of Oakland Drive and you're heading westbound on 94, people are merging, trying to go left because they don't want to go to 131. They want to get further out into the lanes.
Okay.
And then you also have people that are out in those lanes that want to get over. You know what I mean? So you have 2 directions of people
Right.
merging off of Oakland onto 94 and on 94 trying to get to the ramp. Is that going to be changed at all?
That doesn't really, well, no, that does not change. There's still going to be that weave merge happening. But we're hoping by adding this second lane, which I guess the comparison I can make how we're widening for this second lane is if you're traveling southbound 131 and you exit to 94, and you know how that second lane kind of just develops, and you can be on 131 still, and you can just kind of slip off, and that's going to be how it is in this case. So people could stay on 94 and then just exit. They don't have to move over into that weave merge lane.
Okay, because that second new lane
Will
will
just
be.
You can actually use it
will be
from
south. So
94.
It will be south of the one that we already have, right?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
All right.
So we're hoping that just, people who know the area are going to use it instead of getting over into that weave merge lane, which is where that congestion's happening, because people are slamming on their brakes, trying to get over back and forth like that. So that is the thought there, without actually widening 94 at all.
Yeah.
That was how we were adding that ramp lane.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The, so let me get my directions right. The east side of the northbound 131, having that lane closed from going south to north is actually going to be helpful, because even though the signs clearly state, please merge to the left to allow oncoming
Yeah.
traffic, nobody ever does it. And that actually causes a lot of the traffic jams. So I mean, just closing that lane is probably going to mitigate some of the problems with the construction and the flow. 'Cause
Right.
there's few cars, but they never seem to move to the left.
And especially with all the traffic that's coming from that ramp.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
That's where you get that back up.
Yes, yes. And that is, I mean, we've all experienced that and noticed it, and that's why the safety for the construction, and then also just for controlling traffic, that is one of the reasons why bringing it down to one lane. Also, there is a lot of ramp movement through there too, so trying to get the ramps to merge in safely was a consideration. And then one other thing to note, there was a noise study done with this project. There will be a public meeting held in the future for that. We originally thought it was going to be possibly in April or May, but with this new development of possibly extending the limits, we need to reevaluate and make sure we don't have to do any amendments or updates at this point. But there was a sound wall identified for being installed with the project, and it's not where you're thinking. It's on southbound 131. So none of the work is actually happening on southbound 131, but we have to analyze everything within the project limits. And project limits are within 500, for noise analysis, are within 500 feet of the work happening. So 500 feet includes southbound 131. And the current noise levels already warranted sound wall in that area because of the proximity of homes near the freeway. So that will be a public meeting for, letters will be going out to those impacted, and there will be a public meeting in the future. And talking about noise walls, I have a great video, because people always ask about noise walls. And I am going to do this correctly. I'm going to turn that on. I just push play, I think.
Michigan's highways connect people to the places they want to go and supports our economy. However, traffic noise can impact people trying to enjoy an outdoor space like a yard or a park if it's located near a highway. As development near highways continues and as the highway system itself evolves, this is becoming a more common issue. The Michigan Department of Transportation receives regular requests from residents and local officials who want noise walls built in their communities. The truth is, building a noise wall or other noise blocking measure, like an earthen berm, isn't that easy. Noise walls are expensive to design and construct. Federal Highway Administration regulations outline the lengthy process that state DOTs, like MDOT, must follow before a noise wall can go up. First, there must be what is known as a Type 1 project. Type 1 projects are projects that are likely to increase traffic noise levels. If a project does not meet this definition, it does not qualify for noise study funding. This includes new highway construction, substantial movement of an existing highway, or adding travel lanes. Once a Type 1 project is identified, MDOT must conduct a traffic noise study to understand how the project will impact noise levels for nearby residences and other noise-sensitive locations. For the most part, noise-sensitive locations include outdoor spaces like parks, playgrounds, yards, and outdoor dining areas. However, they can also include some indoor spaces, such as classrooms or auditoriums, if the noise levels are loud enough indoors. Traffic noise studies use real-world information and computer models to determine current traffic noise levels and predict future levels after a highway project is completed. Environmental factors are included in the computer model to reflect real-world conditions. This includes physical features like hills and berms. Secondary sources of noise, such as an airport or factory, are also considered. The model uses a special sound measurement that filters out very high and very low frequencies to mimic the way our ears hear. Different spaces have different noise levels that would be considered impacted by noise. For example, a backyard is impacted if the noise levels increase by 10 decibels after the project, or if the noise levels exceed 66 decibels, or a little less than the sound of a home vacuum. The computer model can also identify where noise walls could noticeably reduce traffic noise levels. Federal and state policies don't allow noise walls to be built unless it can reduce traffic noise noticeably for a certain percentage of those impacted. Generally, noise walls are good at reducing noise levels within 200 to 500 feet of the highway. However, they are less effective beyond that and may not noticeably reduce noise. There are also safety, constructability, and value-related criteria that a proposed wall must meet. If a wall meets all these benchmarks, then residents who would benefit from the wall get to vote on it. MDOT will move forward with the design process only if residents vote in favor of the wall. During this process, MDOT will work with residents to decide the look of the wall, such as its texture, color, and material. Sound walls don't have their own funding source. This means state and federal resources are taken away from other highway projects to build them. By following the federal process, MDOT develops solutions for Michigan's residents when and where they make the most sense. To find out more information on MDOT's traffic noise program, please visit the Noise Abatement Frequently Asked Questions page on the MDOT website.
So we will be following that same process, reaching out to the residents, and they will get to vote on it. About the aesthetics, though, because there's already sound wall on that side of the freeway, we would just be matching the current aesthetics. Any questions?
Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a little bit at board meetings before, but there's a lot of work coming to our area. I think Clerk Farmer said it, sure. I think Clerk Farmer said it best, I don't know, a couple meetings ago when you said you were going to get boxed into your own community. And I think that's kind of true.
Looks like
Stay
it.
home.
I mean, this is good information to have. I'm a little like, I think for me, the red flag is the 131 Kale Avenue Bridge and what else is happening at the same time?
We should see if we could do some work on Drake Road or something, just.
And Drake Road, yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be, your detours are going to, may put people on places that have other detours, so.
We are coordinating all that, yes.
You're
We've already identified that, like with the Stadium Drive northbound ramp being closed, we have one of the West Main detours uses Stadium Drive to get back to 131 northbound. So we have to be very strategic in those schedules for construction when those detours or stages are occurring.
So how can we, as a local township here, be a good partner to MDOT and making sure that we are providing as much information as possible to the residents?
So our communications representative usually sends out, first of all, we send out project notifications when they're going to start, and then kind of giving a brief explanation of the project, and we send that out usually about 2 weeks before construction's going to start, because we don't want to send it out too early. People always forget, and then they don't think they know about it.
When you say send it out, you mean to the municipalities or through the MyDrive app?
So that is what I wanted to get to, is if there's somebody here that needs to be added to our communications rep, his distribution list, if you're already not on one, we would like to add you to that, because then it can get right to you right away. And it's usually through email. And it's he usually does some type of notice. It's like a public notice that he sends it out through an email. But he also does, I think he shares that through any type of the subscription. There's a lot of MDOT subscriptions that you can add to your email inbox as an individual as well. But then he also does any stage changes. So if you knew there's a major stage change, he usually sends an update on that during construction. Anna's been a great partner in all of our project planning so far, so I still see that as a great resource to be able to get information out if there's any changes that are happening or coming up. But yes, we would really appreciate if you can share with your residents, posting it on your own social media or putting it on your website or some types of post if it's coming out, because not everybody looks at our MDOT emails. Sometimes there can be too many, or sometimes it doesn't get to the right group because we cover a much larger area. So we would really appreciate your help distributing that information.
Well, and I want to just, I mean, you don't have to make a decision right now, but if you need a public space to hold a public meeting, we certainly would be open to providing a space for MDOT to have that.
That's great. That's great to know, because we have talked about having especially for like the West Main project, because that impacts more than just commuters. I feel like it impacts businesses, and there's a lot more going on there. Having a public meeting prior to construction starting, not necessarily for a design update. We already know what the design is. We had public meetings back in 2018 for this to let everybody know what the operational improvements were going to be in the corridor, but to let everybody know, like, here's what it looks like. This is the schedule. Come and ask questions so you know what's going to be happening coming up. And normally we would probably do that, I would say, in December or January timeframe. We kind of, in the past, we'd like to have the contractor already on board. We're planning on letting this project in December, so it most likely then would happen January or February, like right before construction would start. So then the contractor could be there to answer questions as well.
Well, that's great.
Would it be possible for that slide deck for us to use aspects of it down the road? Not right now, but would that be something you'd be willing to allow us to have a copy of?
Yeah, let me just check to make sure there's nothing on there that I'm not allowed to share, but I planned on sharing all this information publicly, so I don't see why not.
Yeah, if you scrub it, that'd
I
be
still have
fine,
a
because as
question.
we go further, we can post it on our Facebook and spread it out, especially just the pictures, because not everybody understands the north side of the west lane.
Yes,
It gets-
yes.
I was-
That's why I like to have a big picture first to say, like, kind of focuses everybody where what we're looking at. Yes.
Yeah, and just want, the impacts, like you said, to West Main are going to be significant. And just getting it out and getting people prepared, because as you just said, it was like 7 years ago that
Yes.
that initial conversation happened. So refreshing everybody's memory about what's coming. And we saw what happened on West Ninja. It was very impactful. So just prepping people for that.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. Going back to the West Main project, we've had concerns from residents who I know have also reached out to MTOT in some way or another about pedestrian traffic through there. And I'm thinking about that Maple Hill again. Is there anything that's going to be different about the pedestrian lights to help protect them with the change, with the, because now we're talking about more cars going on to Maple Hill. We have a development back there for elderly and disabled folks who are often utilizing our sidewalks the best they can, because there aren't any on the west side. So are there any updates to their signals?
So the pedestrian signals, yes, we have gotten the phone calls from those people and that use that signal right there. I know that our traffic engineer has gone out and relooked at the ped crossing time, and I believe that they did make changes to that amount of time to let them cross. The same engineer is still looking at these plans so that when they have to do the ped timing, that it would be taken into consideration. That's been part of all of the discussions, is that is heavily used crossing for that community to the north.
So have there been any discussions about a dedicated light for pedestrians?
There's you mean like a phase for there's a ped crossing there?
Like one where no cars are moving, only people are moving?
No, they have not discussed that.
Is that something that MDOT does or doesn't do, or
In
just
this-
not for this location?
So for this location, if I'm remembering what had been shared before, they had looked at it previously, and to cross West Main, I thought that the timing was too long for the rest of the cycles to occur. I can bring that back to them to make sure, if you wanted me to follow up on that, just to check with, if there was a response on that when they had originally looked at it. But they did increase the amount of time that it gave to the pedestrians to cross West Main there. So they still have a protected phase to cross, because then it just allows the movement on Maple Hill to continue. So there's green on Maple Hill, there's just no left turn movements that can happen from Maple Hill onto West Main, if that makes sense. So traffic stopped on West Main to protect them to cross.
With no left turn onto West Main?
From Maple Hill, yeah.
Okay.
But there's still traffic moving on Maple Hill.
Okay.
North and south. We have any other questions? Okay, well, that being said, thank you for coming and sharing the details that you have available to you right now.
Yeah.
Certainly exciting stuff, big investment in this area
Yes.
in road construction, so very exciting. I definitely, can I ask the name of your communications representative?
Nick Sharippa?
Nick, okay. We definitely have a few people we could connect him with.
Perfect. Yeah, please share those contacts, and I'll make sure that it gets to him, or I can give you his contact information as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody want to get a cabin down south for 2025 and 2026? And I know you've been a good representative for the township on the team as they're communicating with the businesses up and down West Main. So do you have anything you want to share from your perspective about how that's going?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I was going to say that MDOT is implementing the remaining parts of our asset management plan with this project, so it's been pretty easy from my end to just be like, yep, this has been in the works for 20 years and now it's finally happening. So I think they come prepared with the driveway counts, with the information on the study, all the stakeholder feedback that they've gained. And so I know that those changes will be hard for everybody, and especially the businesses have a lot of concern, but I think when we focus on the safety elements of this, and that it'll be safer for even more modes of users, it's really hard to, have a rebuttal. So it is definitely part of a longer vision too, and knowing that we're going to have increased traffic in that area, more development, more traffic heading downtown through that area too. So it's exciting to see them have this kind of phased approach so that we can all get, slowly adjusted to it. But I think it's been really well done, the way we've communicated, the number of meetings set up, and I appreciate being involved this early in advance.
Yeah, this will all be happening while an arena is being constructed downtown too, so we might have to move to Michael's Airbnb, that's what I'm saying. There's no traffic. Thank you. Are there any other comments from the board on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll move to the consent agenda. We have the minutes of the regular meeting of March 12th, 2024, Planning Department transcription job description, MERS new hire waiting period amendment, and 2 budget amendments. Do we have anyone present wishing to remove an item?
I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Support.
I have a motion by trustee Ford, support by trustee Sakura, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion on the item? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have item number 8, first reading text amendments to floodplain management ordinance 510, section 273.003, designation of regulated flood-prone hazard areas. Attorney Porter.
The township has had a floodplain management ordinance for a number of years. This is simply an update coming out of the new revised maps coming out of FEMA. And this has been reviewed and approved by FEMA as far as the amendment. And then this will be followed by a resolution to manage the floodplain development under this ordinance. Basically, you have one area of the township that is prone to flooding because it's a perched lake. And this allows those individuals to obtain the appropriate insurance. But at the same time, by doing that, we then have to step up. And if any construction takes place in that area, you have to meet a higher standard under a building code. And that's what the item number 9 will address in the resolution. Any questions?
Do we have any questions concerning this item? It was interesting for me to learn that we have to have these pieces in place so that people that live in a floodplain have that opportunity to purchase the necessary insurance. I was surprised to learn we even had one, frankly. It's Mud Lake, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. And then it puts us on notice as far as any construction that we do in that area, so.
Correct.
The notice was rather tersely worded. I appreciate it, how clear they made it, that nobody will get insurance if we don't move forward. I think that makes the conversation very simple. We're moving forward.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
Are you ready for a motion?
If we have no questions from the board for Attorney Porter, sure.
I move to approve the proposed text amendments to the floodplain management ordinance number 510, section 273.003, designation of regulated flood-prone hazard areas.
Support.
Have we set in second reading with that?
Oh, I'm sorry, and to set, what would be the date? I'm sorry.
April 9th, I believe.
And to set second reading for April 9th, 2024.
Support.
I have a motion by trustee Ford, support by trustee Chapman. Any discussion on the motion?
I do have actually one quick question. By passing this now, will we meet the April 1st deadline? Because it clearly states you have to submit documents by then.
We've already submitted the documents and they've been approved, so we did meet that deadline, even though the ordinance technically won't be formally adopted until April 2nd. Our submission documents have already been submitted.
And there will be no impact on anybody's
No.
capability. Thank you.
What?
April 9, right?
Yes.
So clarifying question by trustee Chapman. Again, we have a motion by trustee Ford, supported by trustee Chapman. Any further conversation? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And now we move to item 9, a resolution regarding intergovernmental agreement to manage floodplain development.
This is a necessary resolution that we need to submit to FEMA, recognizing that we are an NFIP community. I did not choose to rewrite this document for FEMA. I chose to use the form that they prescribed, which makes the wording of it a bit unusual in that we are the NFIP community, but we are also the enforcing agency. So I hope the board will understand that basically we're committing our building department to following all of the rules and regulations required for anybody building within a floodplain zone.
I move to adopt the Michigan Community Resolution and Intergovernmental Agreement to manage floodplain development for the National Flood Insurance Program.
Support.
This is a roll call vote.
Roll call.
Are you a little proud of me, Becky?
Very much so. Trustee Ford,
Yes.
trustee Cole,
Yes.
trustee Sikora,
Yes.
trustee Chapman,
Yes.
treasurer Bushka.
Yes.
I vote yes. Supervisor Bell.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted 7-0.
Okay.
And just so you know, we've got another one for closed session. Resolution. Later. Next. We'll have another resolution.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I wasn't trying to mess with the flow.
Next, we'll move to item number 10, and this is a discussion on the, it should say USDA lawsuit update and sanitary sewer funding strategy, easy for me to say, apparently not. First, I'd like to invite Attorney Porter, if you would please provide to the board and the public the status of the lawsuit regarding obtaining our USDA loans.
The matter is currently pending at the Michigan Court of Appeals. All briefs and response briefs have been filed. I'm anticipating that it will be scheduled for oral argument shortly. I'm hoping that will happen in May. I can tell this board that there's no question or reservation in my mind whatsoever that upon completion of the court's analysis, the township will prevail, and these bonds will be released for issue, and this project will move forward.
So that's a preface into our Public Works Director, Anna Horner. We have been, Public Works, Engineering, myself, I don't know who else all you've been working with, have been looking at how do we continue to move sewer expansion forward. And I want to preface that statement by saying, I'm very proud that we got West Main and 7th Street and a lift station, which again, are super expensive, OMG. But we got that in, but we can't stop there. And while it is my intention that we will pursue resolution through the courts to execute the bonds through the USDA, it is also important that we continue expanding. The one thing that we know is when the original Phase 1 and Phase 2 for the projects of the USDA that were going to be funded by USDA loans, at that time were $30 million. It is reasonable that those same projects now in 2024 are going to be $45 million. So it makes sense to keep pushing forward because when the bonds are signed, there's going to be a gap. And so to fill that $15 million gap, we need to talk about other funding strategies. And so Anna's here to discuss that with us.
All right, thank you very much Supervisor Bell. Some of this is going to be familiar for a lot of folks, but I do want to always start by making sure we understand the whole picture and how we ended up here. So we're going to start by talking about some background on the historical and current funding strategies that Oshtemo has proposed to fund sanitary sewer expansion and really capital infrastructure investment in total. And then looking to the future, how we continue to expand sewer and knowing costs continue to increase. We do have a sanitary sewer master plan that is a chapter of our large master plan, as well as something that has been studied through the Public Works Department and planning departments over the past few decades. And then we will also touch base on what our current revenue sources are and how those can be leveraged, moving forward with both the USDA funding and any other financing we use in the future. And then we will talk about specific options for additional financing, both in the interim while we're waiting for the USDA bonds, and then, as Sherry mentioned, in addition to for some of the cost increase. And that's where we'll be needing some board feedback and discussion. I'm hoping that this leads into another discussion on debt repayment, both reviewing the capital improvement plan, the CIP, specifically for the sewer fund, which can help show the cash flows of revenues over expenditures and then give you a fund balance at the bottom, so you kind of know what you need, how much you don't have, and you can be also assured that you have enough revenue coming in for any commitment you're going to take on debt, and then how we can adjust those revenue sources. So again, just for some context, historically, the long-term strategy for the township, as well as most municipalities, is that connection fees were collected to build the sewer fund balance. A project was completed, usually just a road, one area, not a whole neighborhood, and then we would use most of that fund balance. Connections from that project would rebuild the fund balance, and it was kind of cyclical in nature. It happened over and over again. It was also a practice that if there was a situation where we had to be a little bit more reactive, that the general fund may contribute to the sewer fund to complete a project. And again, I've seen that very typical in other municipalities. Currently, the township has spent many years planning, thinking through the different revenue sources that were available, advocating for the township for the different revenue sources that we could leverage. And so it really was, almost 10, 15 years that there was a lot of studying done about how to manage these neighborhoods that did not have sewer and were on septic systems and were going to need a long-term solution. So if we had used the previous practice, it would have just taken so much time to complete them. And as sewer works as a system, like Sherry mentioned, we're doing a lift station on 7th Street. You can't always isolate pieces that easily like you can with water main that's pressurized. So there was some reason behind doing some of these bigger neighborhoods at once. In addition to that, we were also doing an asset management plan of our existing system, so we could look and make sure that we were also prepared for any maintenance in the long term too. So we didn't want to take on all these new projects and not be able to manage what we had already. And then we also had the road millage. So previously, sewer was paying for both the road and sewer improvements because it was usually right down the center of a road. Now we have another revenue source that we can use to pay for the road-related construction costs. So this was a lot of work in the making to get where we are. So in the future, we have these neighborhood expansions through the USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture. We did receive approval for a rural development loan. That was one of, when I talk about that 2011 to 2017 planning period, that was a favorable financing source for the township because of the length of the term, so it was 40 years, as well as we qualified for the lowest available interest rate category as well. So since the initial plan to get the USDA bonds authorized in 2017. We have updated construction estimates through probably 2023, but we have seen construction alone, the cost has gone up 144%. So that's where you get from the $30 million that was planned, and we're up to 45. So we're, like we have talked about, to keep at that 30 million, we could reduce scope, and that in the past, the board has really said, no, there was a reason we chose all these neighborhoods. We know these neighborhoods are in more dense development where people are on their third or maybe even fourth septic system. We know the roads need to be redone, so this was really prioritized to be fiscally responsible while we're redoing a road that has a 30 to 50-year lifespan, to also put the sewer in at the same time. And Public Works continues, we have a few residents that reach out almost monthly that they have no other options, and they have no room to build a septic system up to today's standards. And so they're really looking for this long-term option before they invest thousands of dollars in a new septic system. They would rather just connect to the public system because it would be more cost-effective in the long term. So in addition to the USDA neighborhood expansions, we also, again, have a master plan where we know there's additional neighborhoods that need sewer, and sewer is, maybe in the main primary road in front of them and could be extended into these developments. Additionally, we've heard from development that this is a hindrance for them building in Oshtemo, specifically some of the residential housing needs that we have. They don't want to be putting in septic systems. They know that sewer is more beneficial, it's a better selling point, and so they are waiting for some of these planned projects to come to fruition. And also, we just don't want to be in this situation again, so we want to make sure that those public utilities are available to everybody within reason. So,
Wait, you're talking about future developments? Mm-hmm. Those developments are waiting on what?
sewer to continue to be expanded so that they can connect to it. I'll give you the example of the land south of Walmart. They would need to connect to sewer off of 8th Street, and we have not been able to install sewer on 8th Street. So they would install all the sewer in the development.
Right.
But we still need to bring it to them. So really the point, and it's cutting off a little bit, but the important part of these maps, I don't want to get everybody lost in the maps, is that, again, these sewer, if you look at the legend for when we were proposing from our master plan to have other sewer installed, we initially thought that the USDA projects were going to be done by 2020, and then we had projects planned for 2021 all the way through 2040 and 2050. So in this interim of waiting and not getting these phase 1 and phase 2 done, we also have these other projects now waiting to get completed and building up. So the revenue sources that are currently proposed to pay back the USDA projects and any other cash-funded projects we have, like the West Main and 7th Street project, are the surcharge that's proposed on all users of the public sewer system, the connection fees, which go to the new users connecting to the system, the general fund, which is all taxpayers, and the road fund, which is all taxpayers. So I always kind of use the analogy, those are our levers we have to pull. The project's costs are what they are, or they are increasing, and these are the typically what we have to repay projects. So again, to move these projects forward, they're multi-million-dollar projects. We would either have to pull some of those levers very hard to raise that money and continue to cash fund them, or we can continue to look at other financing options. I say this a lot, but I saw a presentation once by a professor from MSU that was worked on public policy, and he said that communities were built on bonds because they're usually offered at a lower interest rate to a community, they're favorable terms, and they're very secure. So these are all financing, borrowing loan options. We often get asked by residents about grants, and we do continue to look at all the grants that come through. A lot of the funding recently from the infrastructure laws, the ARPA funds that came in through the feds and the state have all gone to offer more loans, not grants. So that, there's really a lot of, it's much more feasible to get a loan, and, you know, the grants are typically for people who are in an emergency state. You know, they have to have sewer put in because it's spilling over onto the ground and whatnot, so, or contaminating streams, things like that. Do you have a question?
I do, and I think it might be for Jim. Of the options on our screen here, can you describe for us as board members what it would take to issue debt under these different options? As far as,
The process.
like, the political hurdle, if you will, to like
sure.
enact it?
Well, basically, an installment payment agreement, that is probably the easiest method. Basically, you arrange an agreement with a contractor to say, will you allow us to pay it over a period of, say, 5 years, 10 years? They really don't have the money to fund that, so what you do is you then incorporate a bank. The contractor then assigns their right to the stream of payments to the bank. The bank then releases the funds to us. We pay the contractor on their draw, and then we pay the bank back over a period of time. So the installment payment agreement is one of the easiest methods. That is limited to 1.25% of your total taxable value, but currently that's about $14 million.
I was just saying,
So
taxable
it's-
value's close to $1 billion, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's
Yeah.
$1 billion something.
Yeah.
I start to lose track of numbers once you get past the millions.
Okay.
But no, I think you could qualify up to 14 million using installment payment.
And the authorization to enter into an agreement like that would require just a simple majority vote of the board?
That's correct.
Okay. That's really the question I'm after, is what's the authorization piece to enter into the debt?
Right.
Yep.
Of the other options that Anna's laid out for you, these are all viable options. Some of them come with other conditions, if you will, like the tax obligation bonds. That requires voter approval.
The last option there, limited tax obligation
Yeah.
bonds?
You've got the capital improvement bonds. Those are usually have to come from existing funds, and we're talking about new revenue sources. Those probably aren't available. Revenue bonds are from a fixed revenue source, user fees, but as Anna explained, we've had to create a blend of sources or levers that you have to pull to fund those, as Anna described. So those aren't necessarily the first option. We can do special assessment bonds under Act 188 or Act 33. If we don't exceed 3% of our SEV, I believe those are not subject to referendum. The other bonds she's mentioned to you have to do with working with the county. And I know that Anna and your supervisor have talked to county individuals, and that is an option. There are a couple of different options with the county. You have PA 342 that can be used, or you can have what's called PA 185. Under PA 185, there is no right of referendum. I've used that with the county, several counties over the years.
Okay.
If you're concerned about referendum.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but when it comes to public infrastructure, I'm not terribly interested in public voting on that. I think that that's not a good way to run a railroad. But I wanted us to understand that these are not all equally available options.
No, and they have different levels of funding availability. In other words, certain acts will allow you to leverage larger sums, and others you can only leverage smaller sums of money.
Was one of those the Clean Water State Revolving Fund that you mentioned?
That one I am not familiar with. That is not necessarily a bonding. That's more, as Anna will describe it to you, it's more like a USDA program.
So I have a question, a very layperson question, apparently. When we're looking at these options, are we deciding on one of them, or we could decide to do a blend of them? Or we should be deciding to do a blend?
So I think right now, today, this conversation is just educational for the board.
Okay.
This conversation is coming back at our April 9th meeting where I think then when we talk about our debt capacity, our comfortableness with that, and then we can talk more about, do we do A, B, and C, or just A, or, so.
Yeah, my hope was really to start to bring up more of the financing options available and then have the board kind of explain what their biggest priority is. Is it the term? Is it the interest rate? Is it the completion of a project? So then we can narrow in on what we're looking at and we can bring those, the ones that fit those parameters and those priorities of the board back in more detail. So that
Well, I
was,
think we'd like an option that maximizes all of those.
what would be your top priority?
Flexibility.
No, give us a list about how, the one that maximizes them the most and then going down.
Well, that was the USDA.
Right, and that's why I asked about the clean water,
Yep.
state revolving fund, because that looked like it was closest with a lower interest rate and a longer term.
When
Yes.
you look at these financing options and you think about the projects that we have in front of us between USDA.
Can
and
she
the-
finish mine real quick?
I thought,
I just want to add about the SRF, the State Revolving Fund. It's very similar to USDA. So there is a right of referendum, a 45-day period that would be the same as the USDA. So again, if that's the
Oh,
biggest
so really no
priority.
benefit over the USDA at all, really, because USDA was a lower, okay,
Correct, yep,
and longer term, okay.
yep.
Sorry, go ahead, Dick.
So that's where, if it's not listed on here which ones require that and which ones don't, but if that is the biggest priority of the board is to just complete a project and continue to install sewer, that changes the response.
Yeah, okay.
my question was if you thought if any of these financing options, alternative financing options, were better suited for certain types of projects that we have in front of us. So we've got phase 1 and phase 2, then we've got 8th Street and some other that are more like sanitary extension, not so much about immediately bringing folks online, but for future development, as you described. Does it matter, the type of project, how it's financed in any way?
Some of them have, so if we're going for the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, it's a competitive process.
Okay.
So if we can show that we're connecting more people, that might be more favorable for a certain type of funding source like that. But the
Okay.
other four are really not competitive. There's no application. It's really proving that you have the capacity to
pay back
repay it
the-
back, yeah.
Okay.
So,
It could have an impact if you're using revenue bonds, if you had a larger cluster of people you're connecting. It's easier to show your cash flow coming back.
yep.
Okay,
Would meet the
Yeah.
required.
that
need.
makes sense.
So
Sure.
is the goal, okay, so the big goal is sewer extension, but is it to connect as many houses as possible, or, residents as possible, or expand the system, or address areas that we know are very old and need, there has to be, I think, some priority. If we were gonna go an alternate route, we'd have to sort of understand why we were going that
Correct,
direction.
yeah.
Yeah.
That-
Priority project wise, like phase 1, phase 2, 8th Street, like, I don't know what else there could be priority wise at this point, but.
Yeah, so we have like 4 other neighborhoods that were in the CIP listed to get connected. Penny Lane is one that always, comes to mind for me. The Promenade Northfield Trail, that's another one. Yeah, we had a resident that one time called and said, I really need public sewer. And so those, that's how those get on the list. And so, and again, we're trying to be proactive. We want to look at when the road, after these developments are starting to get to 30, 40 years old, we have a heat map that shows, we know that the roads are going to need to be completely reconstructed. There's no sewer. Let's try and combine those projects. So yeah, I have a few questions to facilitate the discussion with the board, but some of these might be more favorable. Another argument I have heard is that, getting them paid off quicker can help the comfort level with taking on more debt too. So thinking about 40 years, that's a huge commitment from the sewer fund to repay something, and boards could change and whatnot, you know, so that might be a priority of some people, is to make sure they're a shorter term and that we're just churning them out. The lower interest rate might be a priority of others, so again, just trying to have some direction so that we can start getting
One thing-
closer on some of these.
If I could, one thing that your township engineer brought to my attention last week that really hit me hard was, we worry about the cost of financing. But she said, what's the cost of waiting? And the projects have gone up 40%. It would have been cheaper to borrow money, through, or issue some other type of bond. So that hit me like a ton of bricks. Sometimes it's cheaper to bond, get the projects moving, rather than waiting. Yeah.
And to put things in perspective, from a personal aspect, I can tell you that obviously I didn't get the sewer in time into my neighborhood, and I paid about $28,000 for a new drain field to be
And that
put
was
in.
4 years ago,
And
5
that
years
was,
ago.
yeah, approximately 4 or 5 years ago. So I would definitely be, because of my personal experience, interested in making a priority for those homeowners, those neighborhoods that really are out of options. I mean, I used the last place on my acre of property that I could possibly put a drain field. And when this one fails, I have nowhere else. So the people that really need it now, I think should be priority.
And they're scattered everywhere.
For me, this discussion is not only about what our options, but also what is our commitment to getting these public infrastructure projects done? Are we as a body, and you don't have to answer right now, but I want you to think about it. I hope that we take the litigation to the nth degree, which may end up being in the Michigan Supreme Court. And because I think it's the right thing to do for our township. But in the meantime, if we are committed to public infrastructure as a body, that it's an important resource to bring to the community, I think this is an important conversation to have, to demonstrate that we think this is so important that we are going to continue to push forward.
So I think there's a lot of neighborhoods, like we're saying, need to be done. I mean, just in mine, I know there's 3 homes that are doing laundry at their relative's home because they can't do it at home.
Wow.
Having said that, I'm going to have some questions for the next meeting, and I'm just kind of going to give you a heads up, so maybe you can answer them then. But what is the amount that we're looking at ballpark? In pulling some of the projects from the Phase 1 and Phase 2, that is going to then skew our payback for Phase 1 and Phase 2. So can we still make those payments if we're pulling revenue from them? If we're doing a different area, like something that's on your list, that you had listed 1 through 4, then that obviously wouldn't affect that, but then what is the payback plan for that? That's my starting point. I'll go from there at the next meeting.
Claire, on your first comment, you talked about how much are we talking about? I probably could go to a way higher number than you would ever want to hear. So I think maybe the way to propose it is like, this is what we could maximum do under the law, and, maybe that's not where anybody's comfort level is, but then how do we, and then the USDA bonds take us to, 20% of that or 30% of that, and then we look at that gap and what people are comfortable with from a repayment structure. Because I think if we just say, what are we talking about? Again, if we look at those projects that we're already 5 years behind on, the increases in costs, the number would be really high. So we do have to do it, look at a 3 to 5 to 10-year plan and know that the more work we do, the more connections we get, and that's how we repay things. And that's really why we wanted all those revenue sources, is to make sure that we could sustain that for other projects as well. So I just think you might choke if I tell you like my dream number.
I know your passion. I'm sure it could be well in excess of 100 million. I don't have that. But yeah, so it's just kind of like the payment plan. If we're pulling, like, for example, phase 2 out and we're funding that ASAP, how do we then pay for the USDA bonds? Because phase 2 or phase 1, whichever, is part of that loan repayment.
Yeah.
Legitimate
So you would need to see the cash flow, for quite a bit of time.
Yes, and so if there's another section and you say, okay, well, this section will be 4 million, then I have another source.
Thank you.
You want to go through your questions with the board? I don't know that you got there.
Yeah, so the questions were really about everybody's comfort with moving forward with some other financing to continue to install sewer. I do think that consensus has kind of been shared about, we got to keep this moving forward. There's going to be people that need this in the future. We know that there's people that are currently without, not even able to live in their house to its full extent based on their failing septic systems. The priorities, like I said, I was looking for some feedback on, is it, terms? Is it what we can do quickly?
Regardless of any of that, does Bobby Bendinsky have anything to say about trying to do other types of funding concurrently with USDA? Ran out of breath.
That's a good
Is
question.
that even possible?
Yes, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that earlier. I've spoken to our bond counsel, I've also spoken to Bobby Bensinski, I've also spoken to Paul at USDA, and obviously we need to keep them all informed. Bensinski could help us with maybe a better rate for an installment purchase agreement if you decide to move in that direction for a portion of the funding. Paul Bristol was very helpful in saying, look, if you're already having some cost overruns and you want to have your engineers segment certain parts of that and pay that with another revenue source, because you're going to have a different revenue source, that's certainly permissible, and you still get your USDA bonds to complete the remainder of the project. And again, Nettleton is comfortable with us breaking this out into different portions. The only thing you have to focus on is if you add additional projects, your engineer's going to come back and give you an estimate of cost and how you cover that cash flow. And I'm convinced that your engineer is going to be able to do that in a way, hopefully the board's comfortable with deciding how to move forward. But just being trapped, as an attorney, I feel horrible that we're trapped by the legal system because it moves exceedingly slow sometimes. So I applaud your engineer's tenacity in saying, look, maybe we start breaking off chunks of this and moving this thing forward a step at a time.
I think, Anna, if you could go back to your snapshot chart. I think one question I'd like to ask the board is, what other columns, to make a decision, what other columns of information would you like to see regarding these options in this chart?
Well, it would literally be the process. I mean, that's what we need for each one of these items is the process. So that might be more than what a column could provide, but.
Well, not only that, but if we're looking for, at least for the immediate time being, a project to start now while we're waiting for the USDA outcome, maybe we don't need any of these depending on how much we need, and we just work on paying ourselves back. Not a bank or an interest rate.
Which is absolutely permissible.
And maybe should be added to this list.
And depending on the amount, I know how much we have and how.
It'll go quick.
It's a bottomless pit.
Actually, I'm sorry, Claire shouldn't be the only one up here who knows that. Everybody at this table should know that.
For example, if you say 50, I could tell you we don't have 50.
So the additional information that I would like to see
We'd
is
have to
just,
change our
the
policy,
process is one of them.
Okay.
I would like to see the advantages, disadvantage, because I know that some of them have special conditions or limitations that I might not be aware of, and the ease of obtaining them. Because as you just said, the Clean Water State Fund, you can't necessarily count on that because that's a competitive process, whereas the others are less competitive, but I'm sure they have unique terms, conditions, et cetera. And then how fast you can get the money is, I think, important, because I think we have a pretty good demonstration what happens when we get mired down and bogged down. The costs just go up. We need to consider if this is something we're serious about doing, the speed of getting that done and the impact on our citizens. I'm on my last drain field, just like you. I don't have additional space to put it. And I think that there are several people in our communities who are being dramatically impacted by this, and unfortunately, the legal process is just making it worse.
I guess the only thing I'll add is I'm not terribly concerned about what the financing source is, so long as we can get it done in a reasonable amount of time. But really, as long as the cash flow is there, whatever we can do, lever up as much as we need to do the projects that are worth doing. That, I'm not terribly concerned about where the money comes from. These interest rates are all plus or minus a few points. That would be my opinion. One thing we haven't talked about, I don't think here, is what does this do to the repayment sources, right? Like, go back a slide or two? So we're focusing on where do we get the money from, but we haven't talked about what happens to the folks getting connected, right? And that's where we have to decide how we repay this. So is it gonna look like the USDA is today, where it's quite generous with the connection fee, and then we recoup that and elsewhere, kind of cost share that? Or is it gonna be more like, this is your fixed cost for your share of the project? And I think that's the more important conversation than where the money comes from.
Remember when we used to be able to do $5,000 connection fees? Those were the days.
Good times.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, surcharge in particular, as you get more users of the system and as the rates go up, that does also kind of increase as well. Not proportionally to how fast construction costs are increasing, but that is one that is, kind of growing. Same with the road fund, as every year as taxes go up, we collect more revenue on that. We are pretty much in the next year or two, I've
As the
heard.
economy grows, taxes aren't going up, the
Sorry.
economy's growing.
Yeah. As the road commission has pretty much said, we've done a lot of the preventative maintenance that we can, so we can contribute more of the road fund to these projects. Again, we really do want to be mindful, though, that we're doing something long-term and sustainable and not, pulling one lever too hard now to make a project work, and then not being able to take care of everything down the line. So we have those two in particular, are already in place, and again, I think they're sustainable. The general fund is another one that we currently are contributing $150,000 is the proposed contribution to the annual repayment of the USDA project. So that's where I got that 3% of the general township revenue. And then the connection fees is the other one that Zach just mentioned. But I have always heard from this board that the goal is to keep those as low as possible. So that wouldn't be the first lever we would pull.
Is the surcharge that you just mentioned going up, is there any type of legal cap on that, like within a period of time that it can't go up past however much percentage, or? maybe
It's
that's-
more about what you use it for. So we have to be careful that we're using it for capital improvements. You can't start, it's not intended to be as much for operations and things like that, is my understanding of it. but I'm not aware of a cap on it. I do think, again, when you look at the equitability of it, that's all existing users. So if somebody's been connected to sewer for 10 years, they're paying the same charge as somebody who's just getting connected now, and they paid their connection fees, and they pay their road millage, and they pay their surcharge. So I don't want to make it too unequitable either.
Any other questions or comments for Anna?
Yeah, I guess I just have to say this is it's fairly new to me in the sense of I'll never have sewer out by my place, so I haven't really followed it that closely other than as a big issue in the township. What's my commitment to the township? And I have, municipal water because of the landfill issue. So I know they're all connected, and I've been, following it in that sense. But I would need to spend some more time just listening to what has happened and how we've gotten there and what the options are and how they interact. So I don't really have a lot to offer to you right now, other than I really don't have a lot of knowledge of what's going on. How's that?
Sure.
I wonder, Anna, if it would be, let's work together on how to get the board members some additional information, perhaps prior board conversations around the USDA, so that if people want to do their own homework, they could do so.
Yep.
Okay.
And with me, it's always, can we pay back what we borrow? Right. I'm not giving up any fingers.
And I have not heard any opposition to pursuing other financing concurrently while we're waiting for the USDA, as long as we can pay it back. Is that correct?
The sewer's going in.
But again, if you can get a number,
Yeah.
I'd like some input on that to see what other option we may have.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be talking about this again on the 9th. I think Anna, you took some feedback from the board about what they hope. I have some notes here as well. And then I think we could put together maybe even some real-world examples, like pick some places and if we went here, it would cost this much, and if we used this mechanism, just sort of an example of, I think that would help illustrate the different types of funding options as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Thanks, everybody. It was really, really constructive feedback. I really appreciate that. Okay, next we will move into item number 11, which is a closed session resolution to discuss written opinion of council regarding the West Kale landfill annual cost accounting.
I move to adopt a resolution to enter closed session to discuss written opinion of council regarding the West Kale landfill annual cost accounting.
I'll second that.
I have any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, I have a motion by trustee Ford, a second by clerk Farmer. Attorney Porter, do you want the resolution read out loud?
No, you have sufficient information in the record to support it.
Very good, thank you. This is a roll call vote.
Trustee Sikora?
Yes?
Trustee Chapman?
Yes.
Trustee Ford?
Yes.
Trustee Cole?
Yes.
I vote yes. Treasurer Bushka?
Yes.
And Supervisor Bell.
Yes.
The resolution is adopted 7-0, and we are in closed session.
I was like, I wasn't sure I heard Neil.
Madam Chair, I move that we exit closed session.
Support.
7:26.
I have a motion and support, motion by Clerk Farmer, support by
Trustee Ford?
Trustee Ford, to return from closed session. Do we need a roll call vote?
No.
Nope.
So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries 7-0. Next, do we have anyone? I'm not online, John. Do we have anyone online? Okay. I see no one present from the public, so I'll close public comment, which will get us to item 13, board member comments and committee updates. And I'll start with Trustee Cole. Okay. Trustee Ford.
No, last planning commission meeting was canceled. We have one this week, so hopefully I'll have an update for you next time.
Okay. Trustee Chapman.
We had a good meeting with our Parks and Rec team and looked at some playscape replacements and worked on some prioritization of limited funds and where best to use those funds for maximum impact for our citizens. And in particular, the tower out back, which is wildly popular, is also wildly expensive and will be replaced with a similar one soon.
It's always fun to pick out playground equipment. It really is. That's right, you have good trial team here. Trustee Sikora?
Yes, thank you. Last Wednesday, I attended a Thought Leader Committee meeting here, and there were lots of good ideas were discussed. And there was also some interesting side conversations that I learned about from some of the other members who have other employers and have different perspectives. Sorry, that doesn't sound all well, but like someone from Western talking about where their foreign student population seemed to be concentrated and things like that. It was just kind of interesting to learn, and maybe something that we can do in the township to have events or whatever, bring more people together, things like that. And then last Friday, I attended a local officials academy put on by Southwest Michigan First. The topic was Economic Development 101. It was very informative. If you haven't been to any of those, I urge you to attend. They are very interesting. The next one is on housing, actually, and I think it's June. Southwest Michigan First is doing, it's called Local Officials Academy. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Sikora. Treasurer Bushka?
So we finished up with the county settlement on actually Friday afternoon. So that is done. I will be working on releasing the funds to the township departments. And that will be later this week, beginning of April. And then about a month after that, we should get our final funds from the county for their delinquent real property once they get their stuff situated.
Yeah, I have that date marked on my calendar. Clerk Farmer?
Microtransit in Oshtemo Township, which is called MetroLink, and it is an extension of our bus line service, is expected to begin on April 15th. There are, as I've mentioned before, there are 3 regions in the county, and we are one of them. Basically, it's Comstock, Oshtemo, and Portage. And just in time for that, at our April 9th meeting, Executive Director Sean McBride will be here to update the board on that. And then we can also talk about the other services provided by both millages from the KCTA and the CTA. So, look forward to that. It's going to be a really good convo.
I think so, too. I think
I'm
it
so
was,
excited
it was
about it.
pretty good. It's creative thinking, I think.
It is.
Let's see, from Supervisor's Office, this week, the focus groups for the master plan will be gathering. Our 3 areas of interest are diversity, equity, inclusion, the safety of Oshtemo, and what is the future. And so those focus groups are going to be talking about those areas specifically. And we will begin scheduling the interviews for our, what's the word? It's our business community, so the state of economic development in the community. So we will begin scheduling those interviews as well. We have a full-time engineer position. A full-time engineer position is available at Oshtemo Township, and we are a great team to work with.
You get a voucher to go to the dump.
Strongly encourage you to apply. So, still working on getting that position filled for the planning, or the Public Works Department. This week, Oshtemo will be, I thought they'd go out today, but I don't think they did quite. They'll probably go out tomorrow. We will be launching the job descriptions to hire 4 firefighters. So those will be coming this week. And our new planning director starts tomorrow. She's kind of doing a soft entry. She's meeting with HR and visiting with other department heads, so she starts tomorrow. I think she's going to just land right on both feet and go running. And then this Saturday is the last dump trash day that will be happening on township property. That service is available to township residents from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. After the, at the Saturday event, we'll be passing out flyers, and we will be signing people up to get their vouchers to begin going to Waste Not. So the program is launched. I expect we'll be tweaking it a little bit, but I guess I'm proud to announce that if you're an employee of the township, you also can add attending dump day as one of the benefits of working here. So, that being said, I think we have exhausted our agenda, and this meeting is adjourned.
Good deal. Sherry, before you go, Sherry, I just need you to, come on, Sherry, I'm a lady. I'm a damn